Welcome to No Cover Comics.
Smallville Season 11, Volume 1, Guardian. Story by Bryan Q. Miller. Art by Perez. Cover art by Cat Staggs. It's been 6 months since Superman's debut, Save the Earth from Darkseid, and it's morning in Metropolis. After a quiet night on patrol, the Green Arrow is taking it easy on the balcony of the watchtower. His wife Chloe urges him to come to bed, but he's holding off until he sees his friend. Lois is peacefully sleeping in her and Clark's apartment. At LexCorp, Lex's assistant Otis questions their morning routine of looking out the window. Lex explains it's a ritual for a sense of normalcy, and like the rest of the city, he is waiting for him. Right on schedule, a red and blue blur flies by. In orbit around Earth, aboard the Russian space platform, the cosmonauts are conducting scans when a tear in space appears, bleeding red energy that damages the station. Before they can even ask for help, the cosmonauts are rescued and the space station is fixed by Superman. Superman asks if anyone speaks English and informs the cosmonauts that his repairs are temporary, then asks for the nearest airlock. Before he can leave, one cosmonaut asks for his autograph, because Superman is his son's hero, to which Supes calls the cosmonaut a hero. The cosmonauts asked how they can thank him. Superman tells them that won't be necessary. I'm just doing my job. In the Metropolis apartment of Lois and Clark, Clark talks about the tear in space, brushing his teeth while Lois is working. Clark inquires about returning their wedding gifts, to which Lois reminds him that their wedding was postponed, not cancelled. He compliments Lois on her shirt, playfully noting that they got the S incorrect. Lois explains that it is challenging to get it right when he constantly changes it. After being shot with kryptonite bullets, he felt the need to alter it and add a lead lining to the symbol over his heart. They share a kiss, both acknowledging how much they have missed each other amidst their busy schedules. Lois points out that, despite their workloads, Clark is the one being honored with a statue by the Russians. Clark downplays the significance, but Superman's actions over the past 6 months have inspired many, which was the original intention behind wearing the cape. However, Clark expresses a desire to take things further and reveal his identity as an alien. Unfortunately, with the recent images of hostile aliens from Apokolips surfacing and Lex's escalating alien fearmongering, Lois fears that even Superman's bright presence in a dark universe may go unheard at this time. At LexCorp, Lex Luthor is expressing his concerns to General Sam Lane regarding the military's insufficient response following the recent contact with aliens. Lex mentions that the Russians have been making efforts, highlighting that their privatized research lab is just a front to deploy a weapon into orbit. Lex is of the firm belief that this defense is essential for the protection of humanity from outside threats and intends to personally ensure that this is achieved with his Guardian platforms. Regardless of whether the military approves Lex's joint venture proposal, General Lane disagrees, noting that the military aims to avoid causing more fear, and that a weapon can be easily aimed downward, leading to potential abuse of power, which leads Lex to mention Superman, stating that a man who can push a planet with his bare hands is too dangerous to be trusted. Sam responds that Superman gives people hope. Lex raises the question of what would occur when Superman decides to take that hope away. General Lane informs Lex that as soon as he has cause to intervene, Superman will be dealt with. In downtown Metropolis, Clark discusses the latest issue of the Daily Planet with the vendor when Lex appears. Lex makes a cutting remark at the Daily Planet as he overpays for his coffee. Clark notes that his sister effectively ran the planet. Lex says, Tess tragically took her own life. Lex questions if he's Clark Kent, and Clark replies with Lex Luthor, the people's hero, a title from Lex's PR team. Lex mentions they were friends in their youth, and that he pieced it together from various press clippings. Though Lex doesn't grasp how they were more than acquaintances, Lex finds the world disappointing and is striving to improve it. When Clark accuses Lex of overcompensating, Lex retorts that he isn't flying around in blue tights. Clark impresses Lex with his knowledge of Lex's orbital plans and Clark's attitude, under his clumsy, and thinks that must be why he was interested in Clark. As an alarm sounds, Lex talks about his space launch and press conference while Clark, not listening, whooshes away. As Lex turns and finds Clark missing, Lex is ridiculed for making people disappear by an unseen voice. Looking, he sees the woman he murdered, his dead sister Lutessa Luthor, commonly known as Tess Mercer. And the blood-stained Vision asks,
"What's the matter, Lex? You look like you've seen a ghost."
An alarm is sounding at the port of Metropolis, as bad guys are doing bad things. A thief expresses concern about Superman when an arrow causes them to relinquish their stolen items. As the arrow vibrates in the side of the shipping crate, the Green Arrow, offended, asserts that he was kicking ass long before Big Blue. Exchanging shots and quips, Ollie plays with his prey, until the villains mention his wife. Then Oliver gets serious and swiftly takes out most of them in one shot. Just as the last bad guy fires a rocket launcher, Superman makes his entrance for the explosion. A quick change later, the bad guys are tied up and handed over to the police, while Oliver and Clark take a moment to reconnect. Oliver believes Superman's behavior resembles that of a politician, suggesting it's difficult for him to avoid appearing boastful. Clark tells Ollie that Superman has never kissed a baby, but as Clark, he once dealt with an exploding baby. This leads the discussion to Oliver and Chloe relocating to Star City, something they've planned for 6 months. But Chloe is struggling more than anticipated to let go of Watchtower. At the Watchtower, Chloe is arguing with the computer about its hacking abilities. As Lois enters with coffee, Chloe tells Lois she is investigating the rift Clark saw in orbit. They discuss their hectic lives, lacking time for Clark and Lois's wedding. Chloe establishing watchtowers in the home cities of their band of merry friends, not seeing their partners often, and being tired. Which is why Lois brought Chloe coffee. Granted access to the Russian station's cameras, Chloe rewinds to the incident's time and realizes she and Ollie won't be heading to Star City anytime soon. Something, or someone, came down during that storm.
At Metropolis General Hospital, Lex is undergoing an MRI. The MRI revealed that Lex's brain is effectively new, and the neurotoxin that erased his memory has left his mind functioning at a higher level than normal. But this doesn't clarify why Lex is seeing his dead sister. The doctor suggests it's the psychological toll of Tess taking her own life, which causes Tess to appear, questioning her suicide. Luther asks the doctor for discretion, while Tess wonders if this is to hide that he is an unstable lunatic or that he was assembled from the cloned pieces of one. Irritated, Lex asks his sister if she's a ghost or a hallucination. Tess tells him the last thing she remembers is being stabbed by him, painting him with brain poison, and then suddenly finding herself standing on the street with him, and that he might have answers if he obsessed over it, instead of Superman. Lex maintains Superman will abuse his power. Otis advises against this as a press conference opener. Lex tells Otis to gather all the information available on Tess's neurotoxin, and they must proceed with the launch without further delays. If the military won't keep them safe, then someone has to. In orbit, the Big Blue Boy Scout scans the area where the rift appeared. Watchtower contacts him, and after a little joking about his code name, Chloe inquires about his progress. Feeding Watchtower the data, Clark informs her that he's already flexed through X-ray, infrared, and gamma vision without seeing anything, let alone a spaceship. Chloe is surprised by the revelation that Superman can now use multi-spectrum vision. At Star Labs, Swan Technology and Research, Dr. Emil Hamilton informs Chloe that testing Superman's X-ray vision revealed other vision abilities. And as specified in Dr. Swan's will, Star Labs was established to assist Superman in understanding himself and his surroundings. Emil muses over the hazardous environment drones not being ready to send in Superman's place, and apologizes for misusing his time. But Superman is happy to help, and just wants to know when they find the ship. Lois texts Smallville, reminding Clark he's late for the LexCorp press conference. Superman questions why he never looks forward to any news from Lex. In response, Chloe gently reminds him that he knows better. At the LexCorp press conference, before Lex can make his announcement, Lois interrupts to ask what he was doing during the time between when his sister said he was dead and when she passed away. Lex admits that Tess is always on his mind. He then says he left to protect himself from himself, his twice-dead father, and the toxic legacy of the Luther name, which contributed to Tess's downfall. Clark arrives, apologizing to Lois for his lateness. And after a little side conversation about Lex killing Tess, Lex continues his presentation, claiming he was selfish for sitting idly while heroes rescued humanity from itself. The presence of extraterrestrial entities has made space a significant concern. LexCorp has invested heavily in global safety. In 2 days, they will launch the first Guardian defense platform into Earth's orbit. Lois questions where Lex will find a pilot on such short notice. However, Lex already has a savior, introducing a man he refers to as our very own Superman, Commander Hank Henshaw. At LexCorp's launch pad, 10 hours prior to launch, Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, is in search of Lex. Oliver expresses his skepticism regarding the military's willingness to allow Lex to maintain his Guardian platforms in orbit, given Lex's capabilities. In response, Lex suggests that this may be the very reason the military is not intervening. He further mentions that he is unaware of his own capabilities, attributing this to something Tess took from him. When Oliver defends Tess, Lex adds him to the list of individuals he has met who were allied with his sister, prompting Oliver to remark that these connections makes her suicide even more suspicious. Lex disagrees, but Oliver points out Tess's strength and questions how the public will react when the Green Arrow reveals Lex murdered his sister. Lex retorts that if such accusations were to be published, it could lead to scrutiny over Queen Industries' construction of a lunar facility, referencing Oliver's clubhouse for his super friends. Lex then states that if they had ever shared a friendship, It is a memory he is pleased to have forgotten. Frustrated, Oliver wishes Lex luck before taking his leave. At the LexCorp shuttle facility, Clark Kent is conducting an interview with pilot Hank Henshaw. Hank is engaged in his pre-flight routine, enjoying a variety of foods. Among his five senses, Hank places particular emphasis on taste, as well as touch, such as rain on his face, and sensations, like the feeling of gravity lessening, something akin to flying for most people. His most cherished sensation, however, is holding his wife in his arms upon returning from a mission. Though he believed he would never have the opportunity to perform his ritual again, Mr. Luther has provided that chance with this mission. If he can contribute to keeping the world safe, it is all the more rewarding. Clark mentions that the world may be in a better position than Lex perceives, leading Hank to assume that Clark is a fan of Superman that has an S on his undershirt. While Hank finds Superman acceptable, he believes he is often reactive and should work to prevent conflicts before they arise. Clark suggests that Superman may be hesitant to impose his will on others. Hank argues that sometimes it is necessary to force others see the light. As their conversation concludes, Hank requests a copy of the article for his wife to frame. Clark assures him he'll do what he can and wishes him a safe return. In response, Hank reminds Clark, "What goes up must come down." 10 minutes until launch. Chloe and Emil are at Star Labs. Superman's orbital scans have successfully identified the ion trail of the ship they were searching for. Based on its trajectory, Chloe is not surprised by its landing location. As the shuttle lifts off, Lois expresses her concerns regarding Lex, while Clark remains optimistic, reassured by Hank's confidence in his mission. The launch appears to be proceeding as planned, until the second stage separation, when an issue arises and there is an explosion on the shuttle. Meanwhile, in Smallville, the occupant of the spacecraft that traversed the rift in space gazes up at the explosion in the sky and says, "This looks like a job for Superman."
This is Angela Chan reporting live from the site of the LexCorp Guardian launch, where the unthinkable has happened. Liftoff went as planned for Lex Luthor's Guardian project, but then, moments after booster separation, an explosion rocked the craft. LexCorp Mission Control is doing everything they can to regain contact with the distressed vessel. But, try as they may, what her intrepid crew really needs right now is a miracle.
Superman asks for a rundown from Watchtower. Chloe accesses Mission Control and informs him that there are 6 crew members in the forward section. A malfunction occurred with the platform in the cargo bay, and it is imperative that Clark extinguish the fire before it reaches the fuel tank. Utilizing his Arctic breath, Superman successfully freezes the flames and detaches the fuel tanks. Noticing a radiation leak, Clark asks Chloe to connect him with Hank. Alerting Hank that their cabin is on the verge of depressurization, Superman assures him that he will transport the crew to safety as quickly as possible. Hank encourages Superman to save the day, but he expresses that there is something Superman needs to know. 3 members of the crew are rescued, followed by 2 more, leaving only Hank. Superman races to reach him, before Hank feels his final sensation. On the ground, the paramedics have brought Hank back and are attending to him. Superman tells them to take him to Star Labs for treatment. Lois asks Superman for a quote, and he informs her that Mr. Kent isn't going to be home in time for breakfast, because Commander Henshaw told him the explosion wasn't a misfire. At LexCorp, Otis informs Lex that he has the research on the toxin tests exposed him to, but Lex won't like the findings. Lex dismisses him. He is smiling and savoring the moment. When Otis asks how he could smile when the astronauts almost died and the shuttle accident is terrible from LexCorp, Lex replies, quite the opposite, and he has a very good reason for smiling. Because Lex and Superman are about to have a very interesting conversation. In a cornfield in Smallville, we find Oliver Queen and his wife Chloe. In need of illumination, Green Arrow fires an arrow flare to light up the sky. Chloe remarks that this arrow is more practical than the boxing glove prototype, though he can spend their money however he wants. Oliver expresses concern that, given they are tracking a potential alien spaceship, it would have been wise to have backup, such as Superman. However, Superman is currently occupied with the space shuttle rescue. Their past encounters with aliens have not been favorable, aside from their interactions with Clark and John Jones, and Oliver is apprehensive about the possibility of encountering another unpredictable Kryptonian. Upon discovering the ship, Chloe mentions that she believes that will not be a concern, since the ship is not extraterrestrial. It is, in fact, from Queen Industries. Oliver responds that this is not a project his company has developed, as they are focused on assisting John with the construction of the Watchtower outpost on the moon. They then notice some footprints and decide to follow them away from the ship. At Star Labs, Dr. Emil Hamilton is in the process of adjusting a hazardous environment drone when he receives a visit from Lois Lane, who inquires about Commander Henshaw. Hank's injuries are severe, resulting in significant loss of motor function, but he is not in a coma. His cognitive abilities remain intact. However, he is unable to speak or move, leaving him trapped within himself. Lois speaks with Hank's wife Terry, not to conduct an interview, but to inform her that Clark had a conversation with Hank prior to the liftoff and requested Lois check on the situation. Mrs. Henshaw is understandably distraught about her husband's condition. She simply wishes to hold his hand, though for the time being, just seeing him will have to suffice. Terry expresses her confusion and anger over Superman not saving her husband. Lois responds by highlighting the recordings of what happened and Hank's courageous decision to remain behind to ensure the safe transport of the radiation leak into orbit, allowing Superman the time to rescue the rest of the crew. This explanation does not provide Terry with the comfort she seeks, and all Lois can offer is her sincere apology. While Terry wants an act of God. At LexCorp, Lex enters his office and pours himself a drink when he hears Superman knocking at his window. Upon asking Lex for a moment of his time, Superman makes a dramatic entrance through the glass. Maintaining his composure, Luthor introduces himself as Lex and extends his hand for a shake. Superman, however, leaves him hanging and accuses Lex of activating the Guardian platform mid-flight. Luthor refutes this allegation and shifts responsibility onto the military. This response infuriates Superman, but Lex warns that attacking him would be unwise. When Superman asks for a reason not to, Lex gives 3. Looking out the window, they see 3 military helicopters, instructing Superman to step back from Lex. In his frustration, Superman had failed to notice their presence. When Superman questions the situation, Lex replies appearances, noting that Superman's involvement in the recent Russian platform explosion, the LexCorp shuttle fire, and the current assault on LexCorp has justifiably raised concerns within the military. As the military commands Superman to surrender for questioning, and he refuses, they aim their weapons at him. Lex comments, "I think this is the part where you run." Metropolis 4 a.m. Lois is on the phone attempting to reach her father. Upon finally connecting, she expresses her displeasure with him. General Lane informs Lois that they simply wish to ask Superman a few questions. Lois argues, "You shot at him first. Why would he want to speak with you?" Sam asserts that Superman intended to use his laser vision, to which Lois responds that they both know he would never use his heat vision against them. The general advises her that he is following orders and instructs her to stay out of the matter before disconnecting the call. As Lois contemplates Clark's whereabouts, he zooms by overhead being pursued by a missile. Lois calls Clark and inquires what he is doing. He responds, "Oh, cats in trees," then asks her to hold on for a moment. Superman intercepts the missile and crushes it, then tells Lois, "Also, your dad is a psychopath." Continuing with, "Doesn't he know I used to be the Blur?" That Clark was the Blur turned Superman? He once acted like he knew. Lois tells him, "If he knew I was engaged to Superman, I'm 50% sure he wouldn't be shooting at you." Clark is reassured as he is surrounded by helicopters in the sky over Metropolis. Superman informs General Lane that further property damage is unnecessary and offers to repair the existing destruction if they agree to cease fire and talk. However, the orders from higher command are to assess Superman's capabilities, so after confirming that the area is secure, Sam instructs his men to open fire. Hearing the order, Superman tells Lois to move as far away as possible. As the chain gun discharges, bullets bounce off Superman in all directions, narrowly missing Lois as she seeks cover. A ricochet soon strikes a helicopter, bringing it down towards the car where Lois is hiding. In an instant, just before the helicopter collides with the car, Superman swoops in, quickly rescuing Lois and flying her to safety, away from the resulting explosion. A soldier inquires whether they should inform command that the target has taken a hostage. Sam growls, "No, tell them Superman saved my daughter," then get Luthor on the line. Back at LexCorp, Lex is contemplating Superman's conviction when Tess remarks from behind him. Lex inquires if she will ever appear in front of him, but Tess enjoys making him twitch and has no intention of changing that. Luthor asks her where she goes when he doesn't see her and whether she has control over it. Tess responds that she goes nowhere. She only knows her time with Lex. Unsurprised, Lex explains what he discovered about the toxin test used on him. He reveals that Lionel had the toxin created while searching for ways to erase Lex's memory. During the testing, a subject killed the doctor administering the drug. and subsequently began talking to himself, believing he saw the doctor in the room. Lex theorizes that his heightened brain power is a result of Tess' consciousness residing in his mind. Tess retorts that she would prefer to be in actual hell rather than be stuck in his head. Lex informs her that he has a plan to remove her. He just needs someone to test it on first. At Star Labs, Emil is providing comfort to Mrs. Henshaw, reassuring her that with Hank's waking coma, he is aware of her support. Mr. Luther enters without clearance, but expresses an intriguing idea to assist Commander Henshaw that he would like to propose to Hank's wife. But first, he needs to purchase one of Dr. Hamilton's drones. Above Metropolis, Lois and Clark discuss missed meals, the mess below, the quiet in the sky, and that Superman needs to make nice with her dad before he calls in reinforcements. Then they take a little time for themselves. In the Smallville cornfield, Green Arrow and Chloe track the spacecraft's occupant while contemplating their move to Star City and whether Chloe genuinely wants to move. It was a big deal when she moved to Metropolis, and it's a bigger deal going to Star City. She doesn't want to leave, but feels they both need to. With their marriage and the construction of the League, they need to leave Clark behind and find their own city to clean up. Buy a house. Have super kids. Hunting spaceships has grown dull. They need to grow. Finding ominous new tracks following the first. Assuming the pursuer isn't friendly, they draw their weapons, affirm their love, and turn out their lights, while being monitored from behind. In the Star Labs bathroom, as Lex is washing up, he feels Tess pop in for a visit. They discuss the horrifying revelations that accompany being part of the Luthor legacy, until Tess raises concerns about Lex endangering Hank's life and questions Emil's decision to allow the upload of Commander Henshaw's consciousness. Upon discovering Tess knows Emil, Lex suggests they were romantically involved, provoking Tess to slap him, and Lex actually feels it. Lex then tells her that Emil didn't agree easily, and if this transfer doesn't work, she's going to be stuck with him for a long time. But if successful, it will benefit countless individuals, offering many a second chance at life, albeit a mechanical life. Plus, this will give Lex a way to get Tess out of his head and into a drone he can control. As they trade insults, Otis enters to inform Lex that the procedure is complete. Otis realizes Lex is speaking to his invisible sister again, so he offers condolences to Miss Mercer regarding her condition. As they leave the room, Lex calls him an idiot. With the transfer complete, Luther and Terry Henshaw go in to see Commander Henshaw. Lex keeps Emil from entering, despite his protests. Post-transfer, Hank is waking up and sees his wife, but he can't feel her touching him. As Lex begins to discuss his new life, Hank's hand starts to move. When Lex welcomes him back, Hank unexpectedly seizes him by the throat and screams,
"Luther, why? Why have you done this to me?"
Emil always wondered when he'd get to use his signal watch, and he hopes Superman can hear it. Firefighters were called to extinguish fires caused by the military's attack on Superman. But every time they arrived, there was no fire. Superman had already put them all out. At Liberty Park, General Lane and his team are approached by Superman, who informs Sam that his daughter is safe. Superman is trying to help as many individuals as possible, but Luther made him angry. However, a person capable of moving a planet can't express anger without instilling fear in Washington, which is why the military just field-tested Superman. And if he is going to stick around and work with the military, Superman is going to need to visit Washington. Superman hears the piercing signal of Emil's watch, who apologizes for his situation at Star Labs. As Superman leaves the general and flies away, Emil informs Superman that he foolishly allowed Lex to upload Hank's consciousness into a drone. The drone can't be turned off because Hank disabled the interface, and the drone is built to withstand extraordinary pressures, is incredibly strong, can fly, and has lasers. They put an unstable mind in a cybernetic version of Superman. Just another night in Metropolis. Lex attempts to calm Commander Henshaw, but is unsuccessful, resulting in him being thrown through a window as a consequence. Upon observing his body, Hank examines it more closely, prompting his wife Terry to help him calm down. Looking at the broken shell he's become, Henshaw wants to cry, but with what's been done to him, he can't. Then, in a fit of rage, he accidentally obliterates his former body. Coming to himself for a moment, Emil and Lex try to talk to Hank. Hank remembers the accident and goes after Lex again. Terry jumps in and starts blaming Superman for Hank's condition. Of course, Lex plays into this. There's a whoosh, and Superman tells Hank he can blame him all he wants, just stop hurting people. Throwing Lex aside. With seeing Superman, Commander Henshaw feels again. As Superman and Hank prepare to clash, Emil ushers Terry out. Hank rushes at Superman, but he's countered and thrown through a wall. Having shattered the drone, Superman apologizes. Once the drone repairs itself, Hank insists Superman should have saved him, arguing that if he can't save everyone, it's time for someone else to step in. He knocks Superman through 10 buildings. Superman doesn't want to fight Hank, so he persists with trying to talk Henshaw down and get him help. Hank retorts that Superman failed him when it mattered. If he can't save everyone, why try? Superman responds that just because something is impossible doesn't mean one should stop trying. After delivering a powerful blow, Superman reminds Hank of his identity, Hank Henshaw, and says it's time to go home. His wife is worried. Hank protests he can't return like this, and Superman insists it's better than not going home at all, vowing to save Hank from himself. At Star Labs, plans are in place for Mrs. Henshaw to visit whenever she wants. Hank requests to speak with Superman before leaving. He apologizes, admitting he thought he was doing the right thing but lost himself, and questions how Superman manages to keep going. Meanwhile, in the Kansas cornfield, Oliver and Chloe become aware that they are being followed and decide to split up. Green Arrow confronts the individual they have been tracking and inquires about why his name is on their ship. Saying his wife built it for them, they attack. Oliver recognizes the stranger's fighting style, but is momentarily distracted when the individual references another Earth. As Ollie is pinned down, the visitor questions him about Clark, a common inquiry from those from space. Chloe intervenes by shooting the stranger in the arm in an attempt to subdue them, but as they nearly make contact, they are both thrown in opposite directions. This allows the hunter to locate the hunted, and they ominously declares that this world will soon meet a similar fate as the last. Hearing and seeing an explosion of light, Chloe and Oliver hurry to investigate, seeing the attacker leave, and finding the visitor with a gaping wound. Upon removing their helmet, Oliver and Chloe discover the spaceship pilot is from Earth 2, that Earth's version of Chloe, and she informs them that Earth 2 is gone. In Metropolis the following morning at LexCorp, Lex is having his windows repaired when Superman arrives for a visit. Lex is surprised by Superman's social call, especially after the tumultuous events following their last meeting. Lex clears the room. Superman offers an apology, acknowledging that despite the unfortunate outcome with Hank, Lex was genuinely trying to make a positive impact in his own way. Lex expresses his disappointment regarding the disastrous consequences of the transfer, yet he is determined to explore alternative methods to assist those in need. With a sense of nostalgia for their past friendship, Clark extends his hand to Lex, who, however, does not reciprocate the gesture. Noticing a security map, Superman inquires whether Lex is monitoring his building. Lex then explains that the radiation from the shuttle has created a trail, allowing him to track Superman for the next 500 years. Clark realizes that the shuttle launch incident revolved around him and asserts that Lex has no right to monitor him. Luthor states Superman acts like a deity with his actions, and he has no right. He will be aware of Superman's whereabouts as he goes about his endeavors. Clark warns Lex that this isn't over, to which Lex responds, "Good." On the roof of the Daily Planet, Lois is looking for Clark Kent, but only finds Superman. She won't be seeing Clark for a while. He is put in for an extended leave. Clark explains that Lex used the shuttle accident to paint him with radiation. Lex can track him wherever Clark goes with his satellites. Emil has run tests, and Lex wasn't bluffing. Superman can't go anywhere that is connected to Lois and Clark's life together. Though Lois wants to destroy the satellites, but they can't punch this problem away. So they both promise to do what they can, to come home and take down Lex. At the Smallville Medical Center, Chloe from Earth 2 has died. After making arrangements for the body, Oliver asks his wife if she is okay. Having just watched herself die, she is not. Earth 2 Chloe came all this way just to be killed, but she delivered a message before her death. Tell Superman, it's coming, the crisis. That night.
But, as always, we rise to face the challenge. We're the city of tomorrow for a reason, no matter what this crazy world throws at us.
Come on. Come on. Damn.
We find some way to make each day better than the last.
Meanwhile, knowing Superman can hear her, Lois talks to her man, letting him know she loves him, and just seeing him isn't enough, but it'll have to do for now. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe.